So hi everyone and welcome to this week's vlog. My name is Chilton and I'm the Vice President of Health Professions and Practice and Information Technology. And as many of you may have heard, Verna mentioned in the last vlog, she's taking some well-deserved time off. So I'll be filling in for the next 2 weeks. Today's vlog is about cybersecurity, and as many of you will know, we faced many challenges during the COVID pandemic, and that includes how we access and use information. With the increase in the use of virtual health and visitation, Zoom, Skype, and working remotely, as well as communicating with patients via email and secure messaging, there are new privacy and information security considerations we need to be aware of. Protecting the privacy and security of the information we are entrusted to hold is as important now as it has ever been. Whether it's personal information, health information, or AHS business information, we must be vigilant about how we use it and ensure we protect it. Cyber criminals and hackers are taking advantage of the heightened anxiety around COVID-19 by sending emails meant to trick us into opening attachments infected with malware, or even clicking on links to fake websites to get us to provide sensitive information. AHS is just one of many organizations that have been targeted and continue to be targeted by these cyber attacks. And so today we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the guidance that's been shared about our privacy and security matters, information that's on insight from our InfoCare team, and past COVID email updates. But we thought it would be helpful to hear from them in person. So here with me today to talk about information security and the importance of protecting privacy are Robert Martin, who's our Chief Information Security Officer, and Victoria Lane, our Chief Privacy Officer and Legal Counsel. Hi, Victoria and Robert, and thanks for joining me on the vlog today. So Robert, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about InfoCare's goals from an information security perspective?
Sure, Sean. When we started planning for InfoCare a couple of years ago, we really wanted it to be about engagement and finding ways to educate and inform people about the threats that we face. We also wanted to make sure, though, that it was relevant to people for their AHS work, but also for their personal lives as well. So if we're telling somebody how to identify a phishing email, and we're encouraging InfoCare behavior, locking up your computer in the trunk or encrypting your mobile device, those things are important not just from the AHS point of view, but also for you in your personal life. So making sure that we have educated individuals that are cognizant of the threats that are out there and making sure they know how to protect the AHS systems and data and protect their own personal devices and accounts is a very important thing, because we see about 85% of all attacks on the internet right now are directed at individuals. So InfoCare plays a really key point in making sure that people are secure both at work and at home.
Thanks, Robert. Victoria, same question to you, but from a privacy angle and how the two sides might work together would be really helpful to understand.
Sure. Well, we want to make privacy part of the conversation and not just an afterthought at AHS. We want our people to understand that privacy is part of everything we do and that it affects everyone. So that means we want people to be more privacy aware and empowered to make the right choices in their role. So engaging in InfoCare behaviors is our way of helping our people to navigate the day-to-day privacy challenges that we face. Effective information security practices help us to meet our obligations under the provincial privacy legislation in order to protect the personal and health information that we collect.
Thanks, Victoria. Robert, as I mentioned earlier, AHS is often the target of phishing email attacks. And in fact, I'm sure I've had one every week since COVID started myself. Can you tell us more about what phishing is and maybe a little bit about how our phishing campaign, why do we do it and what we're learning?
Sure, Sean. Phishing really is just a website or an email or a phone call where an attacker, and make no mistake about it, these are attackers that are attacking you, are trying to get more information than you should be giving them. So for example, they may be saying, please log on here for the latest test results, and you'll log in and provide username and password. That could compromise patient information, of course. That could, in a different context, compromise business information or employee information. In a lot of situations in Alberta, outside of AHS, we're seeing that there are attacks against organizations for financial information, where people are trying to extract money from the organization. So phishing can attack personal information, health information, or financial information, but really it's just a way of getting more information from individuals. In the last year, we've really ramped up our phishing campaign and the technology Right now, we have the ability to send 100,000 phishing email tests a month, so we can basically test the entire organization. And we're using that to make sure that we understand where our people are susceptible to attacks, and we are tweaking our training and our InfoCare awareness material to make sure that people understand that this is the type of attack that they need to be aware of. Again, this relates to their AHS life, but also to their work life. So if they're learning something in InfoCare and then they're seeing a phishing email on their personal account, they now have the skills to not respond to that email as well.
And Robert, staying with you, can you give us some examples of COVID-specific phishing scams that we've seen, whether it be in AHS or at home?
We have a service that we subscribe to that has identified 1.25 million different websites and email addresses that are specifically about COVID scams across the internet. Those scams aren't obviously all directed at AHS, but they are certainly things we need to be aware of. These are things like saying, you ordered a bunch of COVID supplies for us, masks, for example, and you haven't paid the bill, so click on the link to pay the bill. Or they are used to say to individuals in the public that AHS is coming after you to look for you have paid your parking fine, for example, or here's some test results you need to log into. There's also other types of non-specific AHS COVID attacks that we're seeing on the internet. For example, the fake GoFundMe accounts for people that are trying to raise money for whatever their case might be. Now, it's really important for people to understand that there are absolutely legitimate GoFundMe sites for personal situations out there, but make sure that you know that you're actually accessing the right GoFundMe site.
So thanks again, Robert. Victoria, over to you. What do AH staff need to know when it comes to protecting information, and why is it so important?
It's important because we know that the privacy of personal information is incredibly important to our Canadian citizens. The last survey conducted by the Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada in 2019 found that 92% of Canadians are concerned about the protection of their personal privacy, and more than half feel like they have no control over how their information is collected or used. So it's really important that people can trust that some of the most sensitive information about them, that includes the information AHS collects, uses, and discloses, is appropriately safeguarded and protected. If they don't have this confidence in AHS, it can ultimately impact the health outcomes in healthcare. So protecting information is important to the organisation as it's part of our AHS values, and ultimately it's important to the people that we serve. So while we have obligations under provincial privacy legislation, we do protect this sensitive information because it is the right thing to do, not just because the legislation requires it. So in an effort to help AHS people understand how to do the right thing, we've developed 10 InfoCare behaviours that help staff apply the legislation in meaningful ways. So my message to staff would be that if you're following the 10 InfoCare behaviours, you'll always be protecting information. And if we don't protect information and we're found guilty of a breach of the legislation, you open yourself up and AHS up to liability, including potential fines and reputational damages. So it's important for numerous reasons, but protect yourself, protect AHS, and ultimately protect our patients.
That's really important, Victoria. And a couple of things that you said to me that really kind of hit me, and that is how patients actually see the protection of information as one of the most important things, and actually the impact it has on the outcomes if they're worried about how their information is being used and whether people are using are respecting their privacy and security. So I think that's a really important one for us to remember, because we care for patients at their most vulnerable times. And if we can't assure them that we're protecting that privacy, that could be a real concern for patients and their families. So really appreciate that extra information. I'm going to stay with you, and can you tell us some ways we can safeguard the appropriate information we share with our patients and each other? And just give us some examples maybe.
So first of all, I recommend that staff members take their ACE module on our best behaviours. That is the mandatory training for all new staff, and training that is renewable every 3 years. Completion of this training is also a prerequisite before you access Connect Care. So once you you participate in this training, it helps you to understand the actual application of the InfoCare behaviours and helps you to guide you on the right path in your day-to-day decisions. When you're using Connect Care, for example, it's important to understand that every access in that system is monitored by our InfoCare Smart Audit tool, and incidents are reviewed. So breaches of information should never happen in this or any system. But when they do happen, our Smart Audit tool can actually help us to identify them quickly and start the investigation process. So as another way to help yourself, we recommend that everyone reviews the resources on our InfoCare Insight page. This will help to give you important topics to keep at the front of your mind. And we encourage every team in the AHS to have an InfoCare coach to join our InfoCare network. The time commitment for that is actually quite small, and it helps teams to engage more with privacy in a way that's meaningful to the sort of work that they do. So if you have a particular person in your team who's really interested in privacy, or particularly privacy engaged individual, we would encourage them to join our InfoCare Coaches Network, and they can help disseminate relevant behavioral approaches to privacy within your team. We also encourage managers and supervisors to consider taking the HIA awareness training course on My Learning Link. That will help them to learn about our legislative obligations in greater detail. We're currently working on a FOIP awareness course, and that will be available soon for people to take at their discretion. And finally, encryption should always be the rule rather than the exception when sending an email containing identifiable health or sensitive business information outside of AHS.
So Robert, it's probably pretty clear that many of us are working from home. I think if you look around all of us on the call today, it's pretty clear to our viewers that we aren't in our office place unless Victoria's got a sofa in her office, but I suspect that's not the case. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit to us about staff working from home. It's probably good to remind everyone that we should only use AHS email addresses, AHS devices, or devices that have been appropriately configured for business use. Can you get into why this is important?
Yeah, Sean, it's really important, I think, to make sure that we have AHS business done on AHS devices. There are controls in place to make sure that we can protect things for accesses remotely, but if you are using an AHS device connected into the AHS network, there are controls that are available that you wouldn't have if you were connecting in through a personal device. So for example, I mentioned those 1.25 million sources of websites and email addresses. Once we know about those, we can block those. So people are trying to access that information, those sites. We won't allow that once we know about them. That's not available to you when you're working from home. In addition, I think it's really important to understand that there needs to be a separation between how an individual uses their work account and their work life and their AHS account. We see on a fairly regular basis, somebody will sign up for a website or an app on their phone, and they'll use their AHS email address as their login. And then that site or service or app gets compromised. And now it looks like, and we'll get notified of that because we're subscribed to various sources. It looks like somebody's email at AHS account is being compromised. If there are situations where those individuals are using the same passwords between the various sites, that could mean that the AHS username login is now used to compromise health information or personal information or financial information. And a very relevant recent example is what's happened the last couple of weeks with the Canada Revenue Agency, where the 5,500 Canadians suffered because they used the same password and username combination on some site on the internet and their Canada Revenue Agency site. So what happened to them with access to their taxes and their business information could also happen in a context around patient information or personal or financial information at AHS. So if for no other reason, keeping the separation between your personal life and your work life would help prevent that, as well as making sure that when you are using the same username, keeping different passwords on the different sites would help as well.
Thanks, Robert. And I'm going to close with the last question to you, Victoria. And I think you've touched on this a little bit more, but it might be good to re-emphasize some of the pieces. But can you remind us where people can find out more about InfoCare and what kind of resources and education are available?
Sure. The starting point would be the InfoCare Insight page. There are lots of resources available to you. My particular favorite are the one pages, which are individual pages of advice and top tips, which you can save to your computer, or as I like to do, print out and put in my office to remind me of particular things I need to be aware of as I go about my day-to-day business. We have privacy business advisors in the privacy team. They are available. They can attend your team meetings, seminars. They can produce training sessions, which can be tailored to your particular needs as a department, with examples of privacy questions or challenges that your team face. Of course, we have our InfoCare Coaches Network. So if your team does have an InfoCare coach, they will be your first point of contact and a source of information to assist you. And where they can't help, then it's back to the privacy business advisors in my privacy team. Finally, one important thing to note is that everything we do to protect information is important, and that hasn't changed even amidst the COVID pandemic. So all of the InfoCare behaviours are just as applicable in the current time. So as long as you are following your InfoCare behaviours, you know you're on the right track. And the InfoCare team is always there to help you. So don't be shy about reaching out if you need our assistance.
Thanks, Victoria. Really important points there. And I just want to say thank you to both of you for joining me today on the vlog. As we talked about, maintaining privacy and information security is a very important part of all our jobs. And just by virtue of the roles we have in healthcare, whether we're on the front lines or behind the scenes, it's the balance between accessing and using that information. We need to provide excellent care of business services while doing it securely with respect for our patients' and colleagues' privacy. It really does all come down to diligently managing the information we're entrusted to. Remember, you can only collect, use, access, and disclose the information needed to perform our AHS job duties and responsibilities. Accessing information outside of your role could result in a privacy breach. So it's critically important that you understand what information you can access within your role. And if you aren't sure what information you should access, talk to your leader or visit InfoCare on Insight. I just want to say thanks again for watching and for continuing to be vigilant, protecting information and reporting any phishing scams. And I really want to say a big thank you to all of you for your continued commitment and work to supporting our patients and families. This is a really important part of our work. And as we've said, protecting our patients and their families is critical to the care that we provide. Again, thank you, and I'll see you again next week.
Together, we do amazing things every day.